Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cunningham here with Casey Cooley.
Hello, everybody.
And joining us on our quarantine episode here again, Cody Geiler.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm good. Living the quarantine life, like Luke on Exile on Octo.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks for decorating your background there a little bit.
I've had a little time on my hands.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, Casey's got some decorating to do.
You can see I got little Funko Pops.
Oh, you do got Funkos.
2 Han Solos. Hopefully you can see. I hope it's not cropping it out on the recording. But yeah, 2 little Han Solos.
Yeah, they're there. They're there.
My son plays with them, so.
That's what you got to do each week, Case, is just change out your
subtle differences.
Subtle differences, yeah. That's kind of my plan was, when we're in the studio here, kind of changing out what's on the top of the background there. But yeah. Anyway, hope everybody is staying safe. We'll keep talking about that each week. We're hoping we can keep giving you some Star Wars excitement as we go on through this together. Some news coming out this week that we'll talk about. But first, we'll dive into the Clone Wars Episode 7, which was called Dangerous Debt. This was the 3rd episode in the Return of Ahsoka story arc. We got one more coming out this week that's going to kind of finish that out and kick off what we're going to see as in what's been dubbed Siege of Mandalore, the last arc here in the Clone Wars series. So, Dangerous Debt. We're on the world of Obadiah, which is the homeworld of the Pikes, which we know all about as being one of the big crime syndicates in the galaxy. Cody, go ahead. What's your thoughts on this episode so far?
Yeah, no, I've been loving the Ahsoka-centric arc of the new Clone Wars. The Bad Batch was interesting as well, but, we had kind of seen that in the animatics like we talked about before. But no, this was cool. The action feels like it's starting to pick up a little more. Ahsoka's going to start to have to, use her power, her Jedi powers, to get them out of trouble. The one, I loved that it started to really, bring some of the sisters together a little more. But the one thing that I thought was a little strange is, they started off in, well, I guess I don't know, are we doing spoiler?
Yes.
What happened? Okay.
That's fine.
They start off in prison on the Pike detention cell thing, and then they end up in the same place. It was a lot happened, but yet nothing happened. But it was really cool to see Bo-Katan and them. So it's setting those seeds for how they're going to introduce the Siege of Mandalore, which I'm really interested to see. So,
yes, absolutely. Case?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with Cody, I think. One of the first thoughts ending, I was like, oh, they're back in jail. But, it does... I always try to find something positive, I guess. But, it does further the characters, the sisters, a little bit. It doesn't do a whole lot of it, but the action was great. I thought it actually was I feel like it was a kind of a darker episode than some in terms of the action. There's couple one scene in particular where Ahsoka lifts up the people, the Pikes with the Force and holds them there so Trace can shoot them. I thought that was kind of dark. She's not a Jedi anymore, but that seems very, very dark for a Jedi to do. But I did like the episode. I do love the Ahsoka stories we're getting. I actually had surprisingly, I wasn't hyping it up too much, but I really like these new characters we're getting. I wasn't going in with too high of expectations, but I'm very, very happy with what we're getting with the Martez sisters. Rafa is, I like her less just because she's just a kind of not a nice person, but thankfully that's what kind of like this episode starts to push these characters a little bit further down their arc, where Rafa is finally kind of coming around a little bit. She has that moment at the very end where she's a little bit of what's the word I'm thinking of, not resentful, but regretful of what she has been doing. So it's getting there. This definitely felt like a setup episode, like just like a quick like interlude to get from point A to B, just so we can get a little bit closer to the Siege of Mandalore. I kind of was thinking that Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians would come in this episode. I didn't know they would just be watching in a couple of moments. So hopefully we'll get that in this last episode. But yeah, it was great to get Bo-Katan again. I hope we. I know she'll be in throughout a lot of it through the rest of the season. So I'm excited about that. But no, overall it was a good episode. Definitely like where it's headed. And, but yeah, unfortunately, we're literally in the same spot.
Yeah, that's where I was, I was kind of leaning towards you, Cody, where I don't feel like, if you watch the beginning and then like as soon as it started and you left to go fix like some popcorn and came back and you wouldn't think it did anything, I don't know what you would really miss. But I think it's the only parts, the real good parts that I liked was obviously seeing Bo-Katan and that, and I think hearing the story of why they resent the Jedi was very good. I went back and looked up that episode that they were kind of talking about, and it happens. So this is where chronologically it kind of messes up as you're watching the Clone Wars season. It's the last episode of season 1, episode 22. Is called Hostage Crisis, and that's the episode where but Cad Bane and Arsing and a couple of those other bounty hunters hold some of the senators hostage, including Padme, Bail, and Anakin. As their bargaining chip is they want Zero freed, and at the end of that episode, it's the next episode is actually season 3, episode 9. So you have to watch this episode later in the chronological order. But then the next episode is called The Hunt for Zero, and that it kind of skips the part that they're talking about, the story that they're talking about. Because at that point, in the next episode, he's already off planet. He's on now Hutta in front of the Hutts. So the end of Hostage Crisis, they're flying away towards the middle of Coruscant, one of the cities, downtowns of Coruscant. So this takes place roughly right after that, right? So it's pretty cool to have them reference back to a scenario that happened, a couple seasons ago. So, I think obviously Cad Bane is the red-eyed alien that she's talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think the speculation I read that it's Luminari that she's talking about that told her, may the Force be with you, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Sounded like it. And it was a interesting story, and just hearing you talking about it, the timeline of it made me kind of think like that. Yeah, makes total sense. But just when I watched it the first time, this episode, I just got the sense, without even thinking too much, that like this happened, like the story that they were talking about happened a long time ago,
right?
Like when they were little kids.
It did.
Yeah, so
it just recently happened.
Yeah, which that's very tragic. But they're talking like we were left without any parents. I'm like, well, you're adults, anyways. I mean, it's very, very tragic. But like, just the way they set it up made it feel like it happened when they were kids. And they've been on their own since they were little, and that's kind of what was my mindset throughout the rest of the episode. Then watching it a second time, I'm like, wait a minute, this just happened like a year ago. So yes, it's still very, very tragic, but I just feel like I was, I feel like I was pushed a different route. It's probably just because it's my fault. I just wasn't thinking about it. But
no, I had the same thought. It took me a little bit to realize that they weren't kids. They were, they're probably teenagers, I would assume, because I think Trace seems probably about the same age as Ahsoka, and we got to remember Ahsoka is I think she's she was.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she's still.
For some reason, I think she was 14 at the Clone.
That's right.
Their introduction. Yeah. So she's only like 15, 16 right now.
I forget about that.
She's a lot younger than you would.
Yeah, she is. She's still a teenager. And
that makes sense.
Trace acts really young.
She does.
True.
So-
Okay. Well, then
I would think Rafa's like 2-3
Yeah.
years older than her, maybe.
Yeah.
So Rafa could be maybe 18, and
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
Trace is 15 or something like that, 16.
Oh, then,
So,
then
but
walk back.
they're not. But they're still, they're teenagers. They're
well,
older.
she was dependent on her parents probably when it happened, at least. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah,
that's
I
the
think
point.
so.
That's the
Yeah,
point.
I think so.
Okay.
But it did sound like the way that she described it, like they were like 8 and 9 years old, and they were, So I think when when Luminari, I guess, said that, I don't know if she just assumed that they were capable of taking care of themselves, not
Right.
they weren't
Yeah.
children at this point in a sense. So I don't know.
But it's still an interesting way to you guys talked about it a little bit on previous episodes, how they're sort of painting the Jedi to the common people, the people living in Coruscant and throughout the galaxy, that, not everybody sees them, in the best light. Which that extra layer helps add to when Order 66 happens. And you wonder, how can they quickly change everyone's perspective that, it seemed like it was sudden when we saw it in episode 3, but, you don't realize that there's a lot of people who don't see the Jedi the same way.
Right. So I would have seen it. I think, like you said, Cody, I think the way it ended kind of left me scratching my head a little bit. I think I would have liked, at least the way I thought it was going to go was that when they introduced Bo-Katan kind of, halfway through the episode, I had this feeling that the sisters were going to get recaptured, and then Bo-Katan was going to help Ahsoka free them in exchange for coming and helping her, fight Maul in a sense. So that's kind of where I thought it was going. To me, that would have made a little bit more sense. But because now, like you said, they're in the same boat. Why can't she just unlock the door again and they're out? Which I think, according to the clip that we saw Cody just recently, I kind of feel like that's what happens.
They got to break out again, and Bo-Katan's still there, so they probably will come and rescue her or them to an extent. But yeah.
So so next episode this Friday we'll wrap up that arc and kind of. Now it's called Together Again. I think, is that what it's called? I think the episode's called Together Again. So we're seeing. To me, that's kind of referencing her run. I guess. Although I'm still a little under the impression that this next episode, and then what's going to be episode 9, I feel like there's somewhat of a time jump in that episode. I don't think it's completely right out, and the reason I say that is because Casey and I talked about this, I think, a couple weeks ago, was that, we were kind of determining how long has Ahsoka been out of the Jedi Order? How long has this been after the last episode of season 5? And we kind of determined maybe it's a couple months, right? It's not like the next week. So when I keep going back to the very first teaser trailer they released at Comic-Con announcing the Clone Wars was coming back, that shot of Anakin and Obi-Wan walking up to the hologram and Ahsoka turning around and saying, "Hello, Master, it's been a while." I think a while has got to be at least 5 or 6 months.
Like
don't you
8
think?
days? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Cody. What do you have a sense of that at all? What do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's been confirmed. Even when we first see Ahsoka, I feel like a lot of people assume, she kind of left the temple, changed into a jumpsuit, hopped on a speeder bike. I still think there was a time gap there.
Yes.
She's just hanging out on Coruscant. I would have assumed, not knowing her backstory, that she probably wouldn't have hung around on Coruscant. We know where her story picks up in the novel, but this timeline is kind of open to where she'll go, and obviously now we know where she is with the Pikes and stuff. But I assume that there's a little bit of time there. I don't know where she got that speeder bike, what she's been doing. So maybe that's been a month or so. And then, like you're saying, if there's going to be a little time gap in an episode or two coming up, But yeah, I mean, 2 weeks is like, oh hey, saw you 2 weeks ago.
I know. It's like it hasn't been all. And you can tell that, at least I can tell, she's aged a little bit because her Leku is a little longer from the end of season 5 than it is now. Mm-hmm. So if it grows like hair or something like that, or then it's, I'm sure it's been a few months, as it grows. And she even looks a little more mature in her face,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think some time has passed. Now, whether or not this takes place before or after Bad Batch, I guess that's debatable too,
Yeah.
But we'll have to wait and see the chronological order when they kind of add this to that list. But I think that, I mean, it is a little questionable when Bo-Katan is saying we have a common enemy. Is she there because Maul has already taken over Mandalore, or he's in the process of it, or who knows? I guess we'll hopefully find out here soon enough.
So another thing too about those Mandalorians, I mean, I don't know who first put it out there, if it was in the credits, but one of the other ones is Ursa Wren, Sabine's mom.
That's right. The other one that speaks is Ursa Wren.
Yeah. I mean, was it said in the credits, I guess? I assume?
It was said in the credits.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I figured people figured it out. And it was the same voice actress as the one from Rebels? Okay. Because when I first heard it, without knowing it was Ursa Wren, I thought that sounded a lot like the Armorer from...
I did too! Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I said that in the Mandalore podcast.
Like the slow... It was like the slow kind of like... Just really intentional way of talking, yes. And I was like, holy crap, this is going to be awesome. But, I mean, Ursa Wren is still really cool.
To get
that would be nice.
The seeds of, like, why is the way to now keep their helmets on and, all the Mandalorian sort of... maybe something happens during the Siege of Mandalore that starts these offshoots of, what do they call them? Coverts or...
The coverts, yeah. The coverts? Yeah. But... That's why I kind of brought it up a little bit too. I thought about it like, well, could the armor be Sabine?
Well, or Saran. Like, I think the actress who plays the armor is a little young, I think, to be where Ursa Wren would be. But yeah, Sabine would make sense too. I mean, you have to explain why is Sabine on a Lothal after all this time. But yeah, it was just very...
well, Sabine right now isn't even born.
I'm talking about the Armorer as Sabine.
Yes.
Why is she not on Lothal during the events of The Mandalorian? But
well, you remember Sabine, if it's Sabine, she went looking for Ezra at the end of Return of the Jedi, so... Yeah. It probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, if it's after... It's a whole cloud right now of what these events are. So who knows?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. So, okay, but anyway, that's episode 7. Episode 8 will be out this Friday. Closing that out. I mean, just real quick, overall, Cody, just get your sense since you haven't been on here in a couple weeks. Are you happy with what you're seeing with the Clone Wars right now?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I think the Ahsoka arc that we've been on recently has been where it really started to kick in, because I started to get on an Ahsoka kick, obviously, with all the news that's been swirling. So I went back and I never finished the audiobook of the Ahsoka novel.
Oh, nice.
So I'm pretty close to the end now. I've had some time mowing the yard, being outside, and just listening to it. So it's pretty cool.
It's really good because Ashley Eckstein is now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, no, I mean, the new Clone Wars stuff, I think even from the Bad Batch, and maybe this is where you see the difference between them finishing animation that was already in motion, the animatics and the previs they already had, versus what I assume are brand new episodes or episodes that got rewritten and, done with the new animation. Everything looks better in this season of Clone Wars. But I don't know if we talked about this on the show or if I just talked to you, Dave, about even the way that they blur when they do the animation, they do these little rack focuses in the animation from Ahsoka to Trace and things like that. And you see the sparks when they're working in the shop. Like, it looks very cinematic.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to know, I assume that Filoni worked on these prior to The Mandalorian, but I know he was on set with a lot of the directors from Rian Johnson, and I don't know if he was on set with JJ during Force Awakens, but you'd like to think that he's probably picking up some of these things they do in live action.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the camera work and lighting have always been interesting in the Clone Wars. I know the Ahsoka where she leaves the Jedi Temple, that scene with Anakin is one of the most beautiful animation episodes that I've seen. But so I've been really impressed just from a technical standpoint. I'd love to see the Ahsoka get back into her own a little more, because I feel like putting her with a character like Trace has kind of brought her down to this like level of like Trace is naive and doesn't know what's going on, oblivious, and Ahsoka's kind of playing coy with it all. But I'm excited for her to face off with them all.
I know. And the fact that I think I got reminded because I almost forgot. I saw a tweet from Sam Witwer where he said something like "Stay tuned," and and he mentioned how Ray Park, did the choreographing of him for Maul. They did the motion capture for him, so he's not just CG'd. He's actually Ray Park fighting, and man, that's gonna be freaking awesome. I can't wait to see that. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be the last episode, maybe, of this
last 2 seconds.
Yes, exactly. Okay, yeah, so some great episodes to go back and listen to. As Cody said, that book by E.K. Johnston was really good, and it's really good on the audio side because Ashley Eckstein narrates it. So you have Ahsoka telling you her own story, which is really good. Moving on to some real quick news here. Back a few days ago, they as in StarWars.com released an article kind of previewing the Jedi Knights and the Masters that we're going to see and meet in the High Republic series that will be coming out later this year. So you guys dove into these a little bit more. I'll let you guys speak more to it. So what's the, I don't know, what are your thoughts on getting this information now on this kind of stuff?
It was great to get anything additional to the original release, just because although it was exciting to hear what Star Wars is doing and working towards, it still didn't feel very full in terms of exactly what we're getting. This press release is another step forward. We get a great, good handful size cast of characters and descriptions, which is very cool. Names and a little bit more detail about kind of how the Jedi are operating during this time. So it's great insight to get a little more context of what this time period is. And so the only thing is like, okay, now we're looking into who these characters are, and it's like they're all like they seem really cool. It's a cool, diverse seems like characters and personalities, but they all pretty much have one thing in common, that they are almost like superheroes, and which they are because they're Jedi, but they all seem like they're like the best and they're really good, and they're just really good people and really good heroes. With different ones of like some are maybe a little more brash or headstrong, but overall they're very good moral heroes. So they were hyped up quite a bit, and I'm excited to see if it actually pans out to be that these are these flawless characters in that sense, in terms of their moral compass. But it was interesting. So I think some people kind of took it to the negative side and being like, "Oh, they're not interesting. They seem very flat," and I totally buy that argument. But I'm excited just because it's just Jedi at their peak doing what they do best, and we're just gonna get a lot of great adventure stories out of this. So but hopefully they are more layered characters than what we read with this press release.
Yeah, I think like you said, at a glance you see a couple of these Jedi. Avar Kriss is sort of the example of Jedihood is the word they use, and this idea of it's almost like a Man of Steel-esque Superman Jedi, which is really cool to see, because we've seen Yoda and Mace Windu and Obi-Wan, the really powerful, but also wise and morally just solid Jedi that are interesting characters. But Casey, you even mentioned when we first saw this that you thought that maybe there could be like I don't know if you like a red herring kind of thing, like is one of these people too good to be true kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. I was reading the one about Avar Kriss, and it says that she's always ready to sacrifice herself for others, and we know that there's this big disaster that's going to happen that they've been teasing, and not to jump to too many conclusions, but I got to think that something probably going to happen to her. She's the example of Jedihood, and she has no flaws. Because for me, characters are where these stories will get really interesting, and I want to dive into each individual character. And the Loden Greatstorm sounds awesome. He's like a huge version of Yoda, and he's got an awesome name. But like, I'm more drawn towards I think they announced that this one, Keeve Trennis, is the young Jedi in the Marvel comic run that they're going to focus on. And she's described a little bit like Anakin in a sense, quick-witted, impulsive. She's a young knight, younger than some. So I'm a little more drawn towards the characters that are impulsive like that have a little bit of a flaw. But they all look really cool. They look like knights, how they've been describing them. But yeah, I'm excited. Yeah,
especially with her Keeve. I was kind of confused a little bit because it talks about how she has a great future ahead of her if only she would believe in herself. She needs to learn how to trust in herself as she trusts in the Force. But then it also says that where's the phrasing here? That she's actually really good Jedi. Like, she's quick-witted, more impulsive. So like, if she's impulsive and yet she's unsure of herself, that kind of seems contradicting to me a little bit. But like, just going through all these other characters, like, they all have, in terms of their skill, have very similar things. Like you mentioned, Avar Kriss, who's the most noble example of Jedihood, and you have Loden Greatstorm, who's considered to be one of the best teachers of the Order, strong, wise, good sense of humor. And then you have, again, Keeve Trennis, who's quick-witted, impulsive, but a great future ahead of her. Who else? Then we have Stellan Gios. I'm going to say it like that, Gios, who he says he's a very noble hero in action, strong on the Force, natural teacher. And then you have Vernestra Rowe, who is, like, I think at 16, the youngest knight in a generation because she's really, really good. So it's just like, okay, they all have the same thing about, okay, they're really good. They're very strong in the Force. Cool. But where's the conflict going to come up? And like you said, Cody, it seems like a lot of it could come from this character, Keeve Trennis. So that would be really interesting to see that. And so, but hopefully, we're throwing these characters together in this great, whatever they're calling, the great disaster, the Nile. If it's that, hopefully that kind of shakes things up and it really pushes these characters to their limits and figuring out, hey, wait, maybe I'm not all as good as I thought I am. Maybe it's that kind of conflict, which is good. It's like kind of like hubris, I guess, in that sense. One thing I love that picked up they mentioned this a couple times in the press release, is that these Jedi in this time period are a little less dogmatic. They're not as, it seems like, strict on what we know as kind of like a Jedi code, and then that can mean certain things. It's a little vague. It doesn't go into too much details beyond that. But a couple of phrases they say. Kevin Scott, actually, one of the writers, is one of his quotes is that he says, "The Jedi, they are all different, approaching the Force in individual and unique ways, and united with a common goal. They serve out not out of unwavering dogma, but a deep passion to protect light and life." So that not out of unwavering dogma. That's kind of how I thought the Jedi in the prequel trilogy are. They're very much, they try to be by the book, even though they obviously strayed from that without knowing. But there's another, let's see, who else was it? There was another character that kind of said the same thing where I think it was actually the first one, Avar Kriss, the noble Jedi. It says about her that, where is it? She's compassionate, not dogmatic, always ready to sacrifice herself over others. So it's interesting that it does feel more like these Jedi, even more so, will exhibit these selfless acts of like, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to do the right thing. And I do love that. And that Cody, you're right, it's like a Man of Steel Boy Scout thing. And I like that aspect of it, where it's just like, I don't care if I have to sacrifice myself, I don't care what I have to do, I'm going to save the day. I'm going to, save others and save the day. So hopefully that will bring conflict, though, because that, it's could be a stubborn thing to do. But no, it was an interesting press release. You can take some bad and good out of it, and weigh it both ways. But overall, it's a step in the right direction. But I still, unfortunately, need more, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's one potential tie-in to canon, and it actually ties back to Kevin Scott. It's not confirmed, but the name is written the same in Kevin Scott wrote Dooku Jedi Lost, and there's a reference to a Master Trennis who actually becomes one of the lost, I don't know if it's still canon, but it's 20 Jedi.
The Lost 20, yep.
Yeah, that like have left the Order or been expelled or whatever. So Master Trennis was one, and I don't know if it's actually quoted in Dooku Jedi Lost as being during the High Republic, but he mentions the High Republic in Dooku Jedi Lost, but I had no clue that it was a thing.
What? Really?
Yeah, I think he talks about another Padawan, because remember, they got a little aside here, but they go, Dooku and Cypodius go, and they are interested in the Bogan collection, and there's a Padawan who broke into it. It's not the same as Master Trennis, but Trennis was apparently a Jedi who either left the Order or got expelled. And I think Yoda even says something like, oh, how terrible or sad that was, or something. So it'd be really cool if this was her. A little unfortunate that we might know her story, but they haven't confirmed that. But there's, a potential area of conflict. Maybe she doesn't agree. You have another situation that could be similar to where Ahsoka and Qui, because I really like some of the Jedi like Qui-Gon, where he's at in the Force, and even where Dooku was, and unfortunately where Dooku went, that audio drama, Dooku Jedi Lost, really kind of helped shape how he got to where he was on the dark side. And it almost makes you believe in him a little bit more. So I'd love to see things like that, where if these Jedi are using the Force in an individual way and they're less dogmatic about their approach, maybe there's more people like Qui-Gon that have differing viewpoints, but they're accepting of the differing viewpoints. But then, those differing viewpoints can eventually lead you to a dark path potentially. So
that's great, because that totally, to me, justifies, or it kind of gives me an idea how these stories could go, where like stuff like that happens, where these individual Jedi are kind of doing their own thing, yet morally united. So, but perhaps at the end of this era of storytelling, it leads to the Jedi Order deciding that they are going to be more dogmatic. Like, these individualistic Jedi were causing too much chaos in the galaxy, in a way. Like, they weren't going by a book. They had maybe a couple ideas and beliefs here and there, but they were a little more flexible about it. Whereas, okay, well, I'm just kind of also talking as if I'm the Jedi Order, like Yoda, because it's like, okay, because you all did this, because we weren't strict on these rules, then this stuff happened. So now we are going to be strict. Like, you can't do this. Maybe the whole not falling in love comes out of this. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Like, I can see it being. I can see the ending of this era kind of falling into the Jedi Order kind of falling into place. So how we know them to be in that sense, where they kind of turn it a little bit and force the dogma onto the Order. And that'll be interesting. I can, kind of be a sad way to end, but I can see that happening.
So two or three things stand out for me real fast. Is that one, Loden Greatstorm has a yellow saber, so those technically are reserved for temple cards. The other thing is, at what point do all of a sudden they change their outfits to what we see in? Because it seems like by the time we get to the prequels, they're like nomads in a sense. They're
like
they don't look like
the
this.
monk robe. Yeah.
You know, like this is very high society type Jedi almost in a sense. So I'm wondering where the fashion statement changed.
But that's it. Like they got too individualistic with how they're dressing. It's like, you guys
You can't have your fashionable robes.
Yeah, you can't go out like that. Okay, you're a Jedi.
Yeah.
You can't walk around prancing around in your fancy pants. You know, you got to wear these little minimalistic robes.
And it makes you wonder, like, you know, the logo on the High Republic, you know, on the sides, it's got that, I don't know what like flowery type. And you can see that kind of style on their robes or on their outfits, right? I have yet to see on any of them a Jedi logo. So I'm wondering, you know, why that's different, or why, if it does change eventually. And then the other thing is that will we ever get one of these concept arts of Yoda? Because he's got to be around, right?
I guess this. I don't know if this is. I'm assuming this is a fan thing that said this, but when they did the whatever event, the social media event where this first was announced, somebody tweeted. I don't think it. I first read it as a reporting, but it was probably just a fan theory that Yoda is on the council still during this time, and I haven't heard it anywhere else. That's why I'm thinking like that was just a fan kind of more so guessing than reporting. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, 200 years. I don't know. 200 years. I would think he could still be on the council that early on, like for that long of a time.
Oh,
I gotta think he's still the most powerful Jedi. You know, one of the most powerful Jedi.
Yeah, he's 100 years old at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Stellan, I swear he looks straight out of freaking Assassin's Creed with that outfit. Like you put that hood up. I mean, it's like Assassin's Creed. And so
well, he's also real quick. He's got a cross guard.
He does.
Like a sword, like a knight sword, but it's not the Kylo cross guard where it actually shoots out.
Right.
Or at least it's not shooting out in the concept art, which is interesting.
Yeah. A couple things you guys mentioned it a little bit, but there's an article here that I found on Wikipedia that talks about the foreshadowing a little bit. So the High Republic was first mentioned in the audio drama of Dooku Jedi Lost. It was first identified as the High Republic era in the comic Kylo Ren #2, The Rise of Kylo Ren #2, where I think it's Lor San mentions the High Republic era. It does say here, mentioned in Jedi Lost is Jedi Master Trennis, who was one of the Lost 20. Keeve Trennis will be a character in the High Republic series, although they have not explicitly confirmed that it's the same person yet. It says here that Starlight Beacon, which is one of the locations apparently, I guess, that they mentioned there, was indirectly mentioned in the comic Star Wars #2, written by Charles Soule, and was also published in Marvel Comics. And its name was given to the project's official reveal when they revealed it February 24th. Now, this is interesting because I got to go back and see this because I already read it and I didn't catch it. But in #3, in Kylo Ren, The Rise of Kylo Ren #3, there's a female Jedi seen in a holocron. And Charles Soule has confirmed that is Avar Kriss. Character,
cool.
the main character that you see on that list in that article. So they have been laying the seed down this past few months to introduce these characters. So I'm guessing that Trennis it'd be a pretty good bet that's the same character. One of the Lost 20. So
So it's really cool to have those authors that are currently already working on Star Wars stuff to be able to lay that groundwork, because now it feels really purposeful, and we saw when they did the announcement, everybody was together in a room, writing on whiteboards and stuff. So
yeah, that's good. I think it's definitely. I'm very hopeful for this era. I guess it just all depends on exactly what this conflict is that they are being very vague about. I think that's gonna. Yeah, it needs to. For this level of storytelling that they're doing, this threat has to be pretty, I think, spectacular.
Yeah, agreed. Well, it all starts later this year with the novels first coming out, and then, of course, comics and I guess it's just comics and books, really, that this thing is hitting different levels, adult novels, young adult novels, and junior novels and whatnot. So that will be coming out. I'm sure if Celebration does happen, there's probably going to be a lot more out then. I think it comes out around that time anyway, right? Late August is when we're getting the first book.
Yeah, I think
of this
so.
thing. So, other news. There has been a mention by Disney that I don't think it's been confirmed, but the rumor mill is saying that the Obi-Wan series is officially getting pushed back to 2022. Cassian is still on pace to debut early 2021, even though so I'm assuming they shot a lot of that.
I think Cassian was supposed to. I thought it was supposed to start in June or July. Start production.
I think they started some, is what I kind of read, that they're about halfway through it. They've been obviously no one's heard anything about that series really. Thankfully, I think Mandalorian was fully wrapped on season 2, so that's still on pace to debut this October. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Obi-Wan's going to be ready to. I mean, they weren't going to start rolling that till the first of the year next year anyway, but I guess they're going to give it a little bit more time. So
they changed writers for Obi-Wan.
Yes, they did.
They announced that pretty recently, so I'm sure that's taking time to.
Yeah.
Rewrites and whatnot.
So that leads into another bit of surprising news, which, again, it hasn't been Lucasfilm confirmed that Rosario Dawson is playing Ahsoka. I mean, it's all over the place, and I think people have already bought into it. But now the articles are coming out that she has a multi-year, multi-show contract as Ahsoka Tano, which obviously is just what Lucasfilm does. They basically sign your likeness away, and they expect you to play that character in multiple mediums. So it only makes sense that she's going to do that. Now the question becomes is she going to get her own series? Is she going to just show up in all the other series, or both? It seems like Rosario might be playing Ahsoka for several years, if that's what we want to believe.
So she's almost her character in the Marvel TV series. She's going to be in.
That's right.
Every Marvel TV show.
That's actually right. She was the nurse, right? I can't remember her character
Claire,
name.
I think Claire.
Claire, you're right. Yes, she played Claire in all. Yeah, I think was it all
pretty
four?
much all. I don't
Everything
think
but
she
the
was...
Punisher, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
So Defenders.
The original 4.
Yeah. Iron Fist. She's got a good agent.
She does. Yeah. She's in with Disney really well. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure she'll show up in Cassian. I'm actually starting to lean. I think the news is that she's going to show up in Mandalorian, but I'm almost leaning more towards that. She may not show up in Mandalorian. This deal might be about the series that take place during the Rebellion era, which is Cassian and Obi-Wan, and maybe there's another one that they're like her own series that's going to take place. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she's. I know that the rumor is that she's cast for season 2 of Mandalorian, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the case. That the case is that she's going to be in these other series and then have her own series.
Well, and if Cassian was shooting, it could have been likely that it was either flip-flopped or she may do something for both, like you mentioned. I mean, the optimist in me says she'll be in everything, probably except for the Obi-Wan show. I don't know that I want her to be in that, personally. But the rumors are that she's in season 2 of The Mandalorian in a smaller role, which is designed as a backdoor pilot to set up her own show, which isn't even on the radar as far as announced things. I'd be interested in that.
But how do we know that? We don't know if that backdoor pilot is actually on Cassian and not.
Well, but the rumor is that she would be a backdoor pilot for a show that is about Ahsoka. That's what the rumor.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying is that to me it makes more sense that she would show up on Cassian and not Mandalorian, to be honest, because last we saw of her again, she leaves to go look for Ezra. We won't have that story by the time Mandalorian comes out, I'm assuming. So there's a gap there. There's a story gap there that we don't know what happens to her. At least in the Rebellion era, we know that she's, organizing rebel cells. She ends up helping the Ghost crew in Rebels. But prior to that, which is what we're getting in Cassian, she's a fulcrum, just like he is, right? So it makes more sense that she's going to show up there and then maybe have her own series like the Cassian series. That just starts making more sense to me than showing up in Mandalorian.
I think the Filoni connection is the one that, to me, makes me think the Mandalorian is probably the likely first place we see her because, it's Filoni's baby, basically.
It is, but I feel like she's the one getting the series, her series.
Yeah. But he's working on the Mandalorian season 2. I mean, I just assume, you got Baby Yoda, you got Ahsoka, put them together, and you're just going to keep printing money. It's a match made in heaven. Somebody's got to teach Baby Yoda the Force.
Yeah. I would prefer that if Ahsoka had her own show, like if she's in Cassian, I typically think if it's a backdoor pilot, then her own show has to be kind of set within the same time period as the backdoor pilot. And typically, I think it's how the shows, those kind of shows have gone. So I don't like Ahsoka having her own show. I kind of like that she did, yes, obviously she was helping rebel cells during the rebellion era, but to me, that feels so covert and behind the scenes that, I don't know if there are so many things that happen to her during that time that warrant a story because it just for me creates problems. If she's another Jedi out there running around causing problems, then that's just a problem for me for canon, just because it's another thing that they have to explain, that they're creating a problem and they have to answer and solve it.
But she's there though already because she was in Rebels.
She's there, but she hasn't really been doing anything until, from my mind, because we had no other stories. We had the Ahsoka novel where she had this little kind of intimate story on this planet with this village, and then the Inquisitor that came after her, and then she joined Bail to become Fulcrum. But to me, the Fulcrum was so quiet; no one knew about it except for Bail and her, and then maybe other Fulcrums. But that was such a secretive network that no one knew anything until she joined the Ghost crew, and then she's a little bit more out in the open now, working with these cells more in the open, and then she's presumed dead. And so to me, it's her whole story during the time of the Rebellion era seems so quiet and hush-hush that really only a few people even know that she's operating with these other characters. And then when she comes into the limelight a little bit, she quickly vanishes. And then she comes back at the end of the Rebel series. But once again, to me, we don't hear from her at all or see her at all until that scene at the end of Rebels where it's post Return of the Jedi. So what has she been doing during that time? So it's to me, it just makes more sense basically that she would have, if it's a backdoor pilot, it would be a Mandalorian, and that her own show would be set during that time, just because now there's no reason why she needs to hold back. There's no reason why she needs to stay hidden. There's nothing out there hunting Jedi necessarily, so she can kind of operate out in the open a little more now, since it's the New Republic, and there's no Inquisitors, that kind of a thing. So that's kind of my extended.
I kind of think that would cause. I know she's not a Jedi, but
right.
Luke is technically the last Jedi at the time of the Mandalorian, right? So that causes possibly some problems with me. Again, I just feel like there's more story as a fulcrum, because again, even though Ezra and Kanan were around, it's so isolated. Those and being on a ghost crew of just 5 characters, they are so micro compared to the Empire, basically controlling the galaxy, right? So I think her as a fulcrum, for one, she's probably still getting hunted by Inquisitors, which I think would lend itself to the story a little bit. I mean, Vader doesn't know she's alive yet until that scene in Rebels. So the Inquisitors could just be thinking that it's just a Force-sensitive person. They might not even know who Ahsoka is, obviously. So I don't know. I think it's almost could be a very spy-ish type movie or show like Cassian, except from a Jedi's kind of point of view. And maybe she's trying to find more sensitive people. I don't know. It's just, but I think there's more ability to do lightsaber battles in that era versus the Mandalorian, because I feel like the Mandalorian, all you got is the Darksaber, really, because there shouldn't be any Sith around. There shouldn't be any dark users around necessarily, right? So I don't know. That
probably depends on if she goes into the unknown regions, though. Like I think the timeline of Mandalorian, Ahsoka, end of Rebels is a little bit, we don't officially know end of Rebels, because right. I would assume her cameo in Mandalorian season 2 is going to be before she goes to pick up Sabine. So you could have an extended time of her doing whatever she does, meets Baby Yoda, does whatever, I don't know who she fights, and then picks up Sabine, and then we have an animated show that takes place after. But that's all just sort of speculating the timeline.
Either way, a live action Ahsoka is going to be very, very interesting to see, because that is a major character making that leap. Okay, well, we did end up talking a lot about those things. I was actually thinking that we had to talk about a little bit more, but we're getting close to the end here. But so I did want to just throw out there, because I've actually been thinking about this a lot. I've been reading a lot of stuff online about the Rise of Skywalker, it now being on digital now for a few weeks, and people are watching it at home. And I feel like there's still a very mixed group of people that think that it's either the best Star Wars movie or the worst Star Wars movie. And the ones that say it's the best think Last Jedi is the worst, and the ones that think Last Jedi is the best, they think that this is the right. So there's not a lot of, and I guess there was an article that just came out today that I saw that actually is from the editors of The Rise of Skywalker. I don't know if you saw this, but they actually admitted or felt like, in their opinion, that The Last Jedi was kind of disjointed and kind of undid the things that happened in The Force Awakens. I don't really buy that. I don't see why you can be misdirected. I'm not a huge fan of Last Jedi, but I'm okay with, throwing out storylines that kind of take it in a whole nother direction. And then, the last movie would then kind of write it and tell what is real and what is not real, right? So the whole Kylo or the whole Rey's parents, the Kylo losing his mask and then getting it back. Like, I mean, to me, those things don't feel like they are undoing anything or retconning anything. I just feel like that's just a progression of changing storylines. I mean, I don't think that's a big deal. Anyway, so I wanted to throw out, I started thinking about like what I would have, if I were sitting in a room with, like if the three of us were sitting there saying, okay, here's our idea for a sequel trilogy. Now, so 7, 8, 9 never happened. Here's our 7, 8, 9. Here's my 7, 8, 9, right? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I've got really just kind of like thoughts but I kept thinking like, because I feel like what we got in 7, 8, 9, in the end, even though I love J.J. Abrams, I think that he was very conscious of the original trilogy and very dismissive in a sense of the prequels. Yes, he brought the voice of Mace Windu back and the voice of Anakin back and stuff like that, but there was never really any reference to the prequels. And I did like, though, in episode 9, he did mention, Palpatine mentions the same line as he did in episode 3, so that kind of makes sense. But I wish there was some kind of Padme reference. I wish that we saw Coruscant. I wish that we would have saw some things from episode 1, 2, or 3 that carried on. So the one thing I started asking myself was, what could have made this trilogy different? Because a lot of people argue that Force Awakens is very similar to New Hope, and in the end, you still only get one good guy Jedi in a sense, right? Or good girl Jedi, just like you did like with Luke. It's there's not a lot of Jedi, right? So here's where I landed. I thought, okay, so what could be different and what could be impactful for fans? And I still love the idea of Palpatine surviving. So I think that Palpatine does come back, but I think you kind of reveal and hint him at kind of the mid to late parts of episode 8, right? So my thing is that I think you should have had Luke as the Jedi Master still, leading the council. I think you would have had basically 30 years of peace. I think you have the Jedi established back to peace and justice and Guardians of Peace and Justice throughout the galaxy. I think that Leia should have been the Chancellor at the time. I think that things would have looked like they would have looked in episode 1 in a sense, right? But what I think everybody would have wanted to see was in somewhere in episode 1 or episode 7, during my movie would be that there is a conflict or something that a couple Jedi have to go look, and I thought of, maybe it's Luke and he's training Ben, if it's Ben. But then what's revealed is that basically what's revealed in that the Sith has come back, and there's dark warriors. There's a couple warriors again, rule of 2 in a sense, right? There's 2 Sith that's revealed. And again, there's a conflict there. There's hints of Ben, kind of unstable Ben. Luke has that conversation with Leia about how he's struggling, he's conflicting and whatnot. But we kind of, and again, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but we get to the second episode, episode 8, I mean, and basically what I think would be just completely awesome is that it's revealed that basically when Palpatine is kind of revealed is that what happened is he did survive episode 6, but he knew instead of building a final order with all these Star Destroyers, he basically said, you know what didn't work? The rule of 2 didn't work. So I am building a Sith army again. So I'm restoring what we had, what Darth Bane turned his back on 1,000 years ago. And it would be revealed that basically he has trained a whole army of Sith. And to me, and you kind of get a glimpse of that in that episode 8, and there will of course be more Jedi getting killed, and you have to put them in the kind of the darkest point where just a lot of Jedi get wiped out, and it sets up episode 9 as being kind of the ultimate battle between all the Sith and all the Jedi. At some point, I think Luke gets killed still, and I think Ben turns. But then I don't know if there was a Rey character. I guess there could be. I think I thought about maybe there were solo twins. I didn't want to be too close to the novels, but maybe Luke actually had a son, or a daughter, and it's daughter against cousins against each other, something. But either way, Palpatine would still be the Sith Lord, leading this whole army of Sith, and they could still have like the Sith did, the Sith Empire did. They could still have Star Destroyers and stuff like that, but anyway, I think there's story there again, something that we didn't see because we got all the Jedi in the first 3 movies, but there were a lot of Sith, and then we got a lot of the Empire versus the Rebellion and stuff like that, and then now it's like the Jedi facing against a bunch of Sith, that we haven't seen that. We just seen it in Knights of the Old Republic and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a long-winded thing about who dies and who does what. I think again we get that scene in episode 7 with Han and Luke and Leia. Han's still kind of doing his own thing, but he gets drawn in as being another general again once this war kind of breaks out with the Sith. Anyway, I was just thinking, God, that would have been just imagine Geonosis with all the Jedi running against the droids, but those droids being all Sith, right? So anyway, that's my trilogy. That's what I would have been on board to see. What do you think?
I mean, I'm always been interested in, like the I guess it's now Legends, but maybe it's canon, the Great Sith War, the Old Republic era that we haven't delved into on screen, of multiple Jedi versus multiple Sith before the rule of 2. So that's an interesting way to flip it, of instead of just doing, like another Star Killer, Death Star,
yes,
warships. I do like having something different. Palpatine being a mastermind would have had a new way of okay, that first one didn't work. Now what's the backup plan, and how am I going to make sure that this doesn't fail, kind of thing. So I like that aspect of it a lot.
Yeah, because if he knew Luke built up the Order again, there's he has to combat the Jedi in a way. So that's where I think it kind of missed the boat on that, is that Luke. When episode 7 was announced, I feel like every Star Wars fan in their right mind would have thought right away, wow, we're going to see Luke's Jedi Council, Luke's Jedi training, Jedi Academy. And we just never got to see that. And that was kind of unfortunate, I felt like.
Well, like the video games, the Jedi Outcast and then Jedi Academy, that was the Legends versions of Luke, and they had good storylines of apprentices that found dark side temple, and then sort of got turned or embodied by a Sith spirit, which could have been like a Palpatine.
Nice.
So I would be interested in pretty much a retelling of some of that stuff, maybe mixed in with some of the things you're talking about. I think those intimate storylines are really interesting, and I feel like that's why they probably went the route they did for this sequel trilogy of. I really still like dark and light having to come together to defeat Palpatine in some way. Yeah. Whether it's Rey or Kylo or however they do it. I wish that they would have played up the dyad earlier and more. Because I think that was a really cool angle they introduced in the last movie. But again, it was only introduced in the last movie. But
yeah.
Yeah, you, Dave, your idea, I think, does definitely solve what I think some people have problems with, is like not seeing Ben's backstory and to where he got at the start of 7. The other one was not seeing Luke's backstory. It's like we're missing that big character change. We're having to catch up over the course of 3 movies just to understand these people's backstories. to understand where they're headed, over the course of the films. But yeah, anytime we get a chance to see Ben Solo more, I'm all for that. But yeah, it's just like my idea of what the trilogy would be, kind of like what you were saying, Cody, is really it's like a combination of like two trilogy of books from Legends. It's like the Jedi. There's like the Jedi Academy trilogy, which includes Luke's Academy and his students, and then you have the Thrawn trilogy, the first Thrawn trilogy. So it's definitely could have been gone totally different, but it was your ideas it's great. I love. Yeah, it still doesn't seem like it's just like every time we get a little bit of a glimmer of hope from the story group of like getting something that we thought all the fans wanted, they do a little differently, so it's not quite, so it's like, okay, we're going far into the past with the High Republic, but it's not the Old Republic, so there's still no Sith.
That's
so
right.
It's like, okay, you're giving us a lot of Jedi back, you're giving us that kind of era of this regal, medieval type of Jedi like the Old Republic, but it's not completely the Old Republic. So, like, so it's like your idea, Dave. It's like giving us what we've always wanted.
Yeah, and I think I would have done more time jumping in between each movie, also, right? So, I feel like you have the discovery that the Sith are back in 7, and then there's a time jump of 6 months or so. And now they're, they get into a big situation or something like that. And then there's even more of a time gap, maybe a year or two till the next movie where there's just chaos everywhere. The Sith are starting to take over. And then that, again, introduces you to be able to do more of the intercut storylines or stories, novels, books, games in between the movies, just like you're doing right now. But, anyway, I just think you would. I even thought about it first, like it would have been cool to see Luke and Leia as Jedi, as Jedi Masters. Like that would have been cool too. But I felt like it would still make sense that she's kind of running the government side of things and he's running the Jedi side of things. And that would have been a cool dynamic. The two leaders of the New Republic, Jedi, and them being brother and sister. I thought that would have been really neat. So.
Well, if you saw them together, like your idea, you could still do what they did in 9. Hopefully, if they had the ability, with the unfortunate what happened to Carrie Fisher, still have her pulled back into the fray as a master or as like a mentor figure for a Jedi character. If we lose Han, if we lose Luke, and if it still goes that way,
right.
You could bring her out of politics into that teacher role. If she had that backstory that you maybe touched on in the beginning or something. Yeah,
that'd be cool. It's like the old cop coming out of retirement and picking up their gun again. It's like maybe the Senate gets wiped out or something like that, and she's got to pick up her lightsaber to go back out and fight. That would have been actually really awesome. Man.
I could see Carrie Fisher like really owning some of that acting too. If she was given that material to work with.
Yeah,
that's on the cigarette.
Exactly. She just got her feet kicked up.
Here we go again.
Like a normal style, and she pulls the lightsaber out of it.
Closet. That's awesome. Anyway, completely no relevancy out there right now except my wishes, hopes, and dreams. But but look, I'm happy. I'm happy with the sequel trilogy. I mean, it's other filmmakers' visions, and it's Star Wars still. But
the prequels could have been different. The original trilogy could have been different.
Totally.
So
yeah, totally. All right. What else? Anything else you guys got? I think that's all. It's on my notes. That will do it for this week of episode of Inside the Force. I said it was 293, man. We're 7 episodes away from a big 300.
Yeah, hopefully we're all back together by the time we get to 300.
7 weeks? 7 weeks will put us 1st of June, so we'll see. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, yeah. Either way, this has been a cool setup to do too. Anyways, still cranking out Star Wars podcast stuff. So, thanks, Cody, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Case, as always. I think I speak for all three of us in saying, again, we're praying for everybody, and we hope everybody stays safe and just follow the rules and the guidelines, everybody. And I think we'll get through this and back to going to places like Celebration and all that stuff again one of these days here. So thanks, guys. Take care.
Yep. See everybody.
Thanks, everybody. InsideTheForce.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we'll see you guys next week. For Cody.
Bye-bye.
Casey.
Goodbye, everybody.
And Dave, may the Force be with you.